So the week after I decided to do Tip Test Tuesday, due to various circumstances in my uploading schedule this week, our pen test is on Wednesday. You're welcome. Today I am looking at the Pigma Micron brush pens, or they are actually, I think, just called the Pigma Brush pens. They're from Sakura of America, the same ink, the same people who do the Pigma Micron pens. And I'm excited about these because I love trying new pens and I really love the Pigma Micron ink. Fair disclosure, I actually tested these on Instagram before making this video, and so I already know that my heavy hand is going to be a bit of a problem for these guys. But before we talk about that, let's get some of the information. Sakura sent these to me to look at. They did not require anything out of me besides taking a look at them. They didn't ask me to make this review. They didn't ask me to do shit. So this video and these opinions are all completely my own. And if you don't believe me, I don't know how to convince you otherwise. According to the information on the package, they are archival quality, they're bleed proof, they are quick drying, they are pH neutral. What else? Chemical resistant, fade resistant, bleed free. I think I said that already. And they're meant for paper crafts, illustration, freehand calligraphy, manga art, and crafts. Before I get into them, looking at the nib, we look at the nib later, but they're small, but they are super flexible. And I know going into this that I was very worried about how it would stand up to my iron fist. Another disclaimer I want to make, that I have a heavy hand, so don't be surprised if that's the perspective that I'm reviewing these on. Also, one final bit of information, they sell these on Amazon, Michael's, all over the place. On Amazon, they retail for $10 for a pack of 8 currently, which is actually a pretty good deal, especially for these pens, because these pens can get expensive. The color selection that you get with the 8-pack is a black, brown, orange, red, blue, green, purple, and pink. Was that 8? Let's get into the test. First, I'm going to take a look at the brush nib. We've got a fairly small nib here, but there's the thinnest stroke. Oh, well, okay, that was janky. Let's try this again. The thinnest stroke and then the fattest stroke. It's a nice difference, though I can already tell the nib is kind of floppy. All I've done thus far is test these on Instagram, and I could tell then that it's going to be kind of a floppy nib. Here's a Pentel Sign pen whose nib is slightly smaller than this, but its biggest stroke is a lot smaller. Like the size of the nib compared to the size of the stroke, the proportion is a lot different. So let's give this a try doing like an up and down motion. So you have down and then up. And I'm already noticing it's difficult for me to keep control with the upper, like the lighter stroke. But as I'm an iron fist, this is something I'm used to. This is not necessarily something that I am concerned about off the bat. Let's try it like with less bulge here. Let's go down, up. I think the biggest issue I'm having with this, because the nib is so flexible, like it is really flexible, is this transition. The transition is a little difficult for me, and keeping the light stroke uniform is difficult for me as well. Let's try writing a word though. This is where I ran into trouble on Instagram. Yeah, see, it's super sloppy and all over the place for me, and you can't see it. I don't know if I can show you, but there's like an indentation because of my heaviness. Plastic right here is digging into the paper. I think that might be a function of my heavy-handedness, but my very first impression of these pens is that for writing, they may not be the most heavy-handed friendly pens. Now, if I use less pressure though, down. See, that is cooler because I'm not pressing all the way down, but I'm just so used to being able to lay it down as flat as I possibly can that it's a little odd for me. Now the ink is the Pigma Micron ink, so I know that, it should meet all the tests, but we might as well do the same thing anyway, do the usual testing to see if it meets the claims. We'll look at bleed free. This is cardstock paper, so you wouldn't know, but let me grab some note paper. This is just a piece of note paper from a Christian Designs mystery kit. And I can already see how the tip of this is starting to You can see kind of where it's starting to separate a little. This might be because of my heavy hand, and I've only been using them a bit. And there's no bleed. It like might slightly shadow, but this is thin paper, but there is no bleed. I'm gonna test a theory though of mine. Just do a flat stroke on top of that, still no bleed. I can start feeling the paper pilling, but still no bleed. Now it's starting to kind of bleed through. And now we're getting the bleed. So it's like what, 5 strokes, 5 layers. So that's helpful. Let's check out quick drying. Do a nice fat impression. 1 swipe. There is a tiny, tiny amount of showing like where it like got rubbed. Why am I like brain farting on what that word is? Very tiny, especially considering how much ink gets put down when you use a brush pen. Yeah, just a little tiny bit. But if you count to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's nothing. Yes, it is quick drying. And then my favorite test, here's a water brush. Let's check and see if this ink is waterproof. A little tiny bit of it moves around, but just very barely. And I imagine if I let like these first strokes that I took earlier in a part of the video where I fucked up and had to redo it, just a slight. I wonder if I use a different color. Let's put some red down. I gave the red the time to dry, so let's give it a shot. Yeah, see, a little bit of ink comes up. You might have to like let it dry for quite some time for it to be fully waterproof, because I know other micron ink is waterproof, but with the amount you're putting down with the brush pen, it may take a little bit longer. And of course, I can't test pH neutral, archival quality, or anything like that without, you know, many hours and years of time. Now I am going to test out all the colors. I'm going to speed this up, and then I will have a conversation about them as soon as I'm done with that. All right. I think you could see from the color testing, my swatch situation there, that I gave up on trying to do brush lettering with these pens. My heavy hand was so heavy. I was putting grooves in the paper with like this plastic part right here, this situation, because there was like so little resistance, so much give on the nib that I was like flat against the paper and digging into it. You can see in the beginning here with the black that I was trying to start with like pulling the pressure back and doing less heavy strokes, and it just wasn't working for me. I could not do it. It was very difficult as a heavy-handed letterer to try and get the hang of those. I am pretty much going to say that if you are heavy-handed, these may not be the brush pens for you. Though if you're a lefty, you may want to really give them a try, because they do dry really quickly and you won't make the giant mess with the side of your hand that I know some lefties make. And if you are lighter-handed, you actually might have some fun lettering with these. Because it is so flexible, you can have multiple widths based on how much pressure you're putting down. I mean, I know you can probably do that with most brush pens, but with how flexible these nibs are, you could get a whole variety of different downstrokes, from a super thin stroke all the way to the fattiest of the boom battiest, which is pretty cool. I appreciate that. Now, after I had done that Instagram situation and I knew that I was already struggling with them, I was kind of talking to some of my patrons about it, and somebody suggested that it's similar to a Copic marker, so I decided to give that a test. And sure enough, the nib is smaller and it's like different saturations and, you know, different kinds of inks and all the different things, but they have very similar super loose flexibilities. And the reason that's great for the Copic brush tip is that it makes a wonderful illustration like shading marker. And I bet you anything that these Pigma microns would make excellent illustration shading markers as well. The one issue here is that the Pigma ink line, the colors, there is a limited number. I think it's like 8 or 10 total colors available to purchase Pigma ink. So if they wanted to really make these become a handy, like smaller version of an illustration marker, like maybe not so fat as like a Copic, that they would need to come out with a wider color range to be able to have different saturations and hues to be able to really blend into each other. Because if you all you have is like a red and a pink, like as you could see with my blending on that flower. There's just not a lot of difference to be able to do blending with. So that would be a suggestion to Sakura. Overall, I would say that while I love the Pigma Micron ink and I love the pens in general, I personally will not be reaching for these for lettering, although I did really enjoy how the printing lettering was turning out. So I might use these to work on that because I really liked the look of that. But for brush lettering, it's too frustrating for me. Like, I guess with a lot of practice maybe, but I have so many other pens to like mess around with, including more pens from Sakura, so I don't really have the urge to figure it out. For illustration purposes and paper crafting purposes, maybe stamping, coloring things in, maybe doing big bubble letters and adding some shadows, brush shadows, things like that, I can get a lot of use out of them that way. But in standard brush lettering, as a heavy-handed letterer, they are just not my thing. Have you tried these pens before and gotten some good use out of them? If you have, let me know in the comments so that I can kind of get some more ideas on how to use these more effectively. If you are a heavy-handed letterer, please let me know if you've used these and like them in the comments so I can figure out if maybe I'm just fucking up and not using them right, or maybe I just am so like iron-fisted that I'm no good at control, which is actually kind of true. I really do love the ink though, and I will make use out of these. And thank you so much to Sakura for sending them to me. I felt very special when I got a package. That's doesn't happen very often for me, so it was kind of neat. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.